if I can thank everybody for coming. I've been running these all week, and I see a lot of the same faces, so I appreciate you coming back. If you're new, I appreciate you popping by. We have got the whole crew from Danville here to present Creating a Culture of Yes. I am Chase from CPRS. We're hosting the session. If you need anything at all, you can email me, chase@cprs.org. And at the end of this session, I'm going to be posting a link to an evaluation. It'll ask you a question, do you need CEUs? So if you need CEUs, take that. We'll compare your email address to the one you registered with, and that's how we're keeping track of everything. We're not using that email for anything else, so you won't get spam. If you have comments for the instructors, they will be anonymous. So without further ado, I will hand it off to Danville. If they ask you to chat, you've got mute controls are in the bottom left window. After you put your mouse over Zoom, you should see a little microphone down in the corner. If they call on you to answer a question, you can unmute yourself, come on up to the mic. But otherwise, take it away, Danville.
Awesome. Hey, first and foremost, thank you guys again, as Chase said, for even coming on to this thing. I got a chance to see there's a few of you on here. It's really cool, and it's quite humbling actually, and probably a little more nerve-wracking than if we were actually face-to-face at conference doing this live. So, but it's nice to see familiar faces and smiles as well. So thank you guys for coming. My name is Henry Perezalonso. I am the Recreation Arts and Community Services Director here in the town of Danville, and I will be helping kind of facilitate our staff who will introduce themselves in just a couple of moments as we kind of just talk and share with you guys just a little bit about who we are and what we do, and hopefully in what we are striving to do in our department, and even to expand out to our agency, just kind of building a culture of yes and what that is. It's really creating letting creativity where new ideas are supported and can be executed, whether it's and often they're challenging. Most often when we see those things, they're met with a no, and we just try and find different ways to get to a yes. And when I say a yes, the yes may be different than the original proposal that we put out there. We do this kind of try and find ways to share the ideas. We have a method that we use, what we call the Swiss cheese method, which is another word for saying poking holes in projects, making sure that we're thinking of all sides and all things that may be able to help us reach our goal and whatever that idea or thing may be. So today, hopefully through this conversation, we're hoping you understand how we're growing a culture of yes, how you might be able to do that in the same from where you are. Understand also how a change in culture takes some time, and it can also change over time. And then understand how brainstorming while poking holes in new ideas really kind of helps us move forward. So with that being said, I would love for the rest of our panel to introduce yourselves. So as an example, I've been with the town for 8 years. So if you guys don't mind introducing yourself, tell us how long you've been in the town, a couple of different roles you might have played in the town, with the town, and then we'll kick it off from there. So do you want to go for it? I don't know if you guys can see each other in order, but I know I see Jessica, Ian, Leah, RJ, Kat. So.
Okay, so you want me to go first?
Go for it.
I'm Jessica Wallner. I'm the Cultural Arts and Marketing Supervisor for the town of Danville. So my background is our village theater. And I have been with the town for going on 14 years. I have been in many different roles. I actually started off as an intern. I was then the youth program assistant, then the youth and teen coordinator, then the youth and teen supervisor, and now I'm the cultural arts and marketing supervisor.
And my name's Ian Murdock, and I have been with the town for coming up on 13 years. And I all started as a coordinator for sports and fitness, which included aquatics as well, our seasonal aquatics program. Did that for about 6 or 7 years, and then was given the opportunity to become the supervisor for adults and seniors, which I did for a couple of years, and then got the opportunity to supervise facilities, sports and fitness, which I've been doing for the last couple of years.
My name is Leah Martinez. I am the program supervisor that oversees adult and senior programming. I first came to the town as the teen coordinator in 2014, worked with Danville a little while, had to go away, and then I came back. So I've been here about a total of 3.5 years.
Hello, I'm RJ Natal. I'm the Youth and Teen Supervisor. I came to Danville 5 years ago as the Seniors and Adult Coordinator, and then I moved over to be the Youth Coordinator, and then currently in my position now for about 5 years.
And I am Kat Bravo. I have been with the town for about 13 years. I started part-time. Pretty much hit every single program area in recreation through my part-time experience, and then came on full-time as a program coordinator for adult sports and facilities. And I've been here in that position for almost 5 years.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. So as you can tell, there's a lot of folks that have a varied experience already just through, I would say this is almost like half of our department, but through their various experience, whether it be here with the town or elsewhere. Just a little bit of history on the department. So again, over the last 8 years, so I got here 8 years ago after leaving the city of Mountain View where I was for about 13 years. I came into an agency that had a recreation manager in its position for about 10 years, and their director was in the position for about 20 years. So it was about 30 years of experience that was here within this department, running it as, in a certain fashion. One of the things that I had to come into was basically losing that institutional knowledge as they both left. Essentially, one left because I took the job, and the other one left because she took a new job. So it was one of those things for me that came into a new organization. I was now the newest kid on the block, and how are you going to kind of take on this role that is new, a new staff, new to me, and kind of look at what happened. For me personally, looking at a staff, it was the staff that was going was moving along and had a certain style in itself and a certain culture that they had that really relied on a lot of the leadership sharing what their vision was and trying to foster that in one particular direction. I come from a background of a lot of collaboration and really reaching out to different folks. So there's a slight difference in philosophy in coming in, as well as for me, I had a little bit of I have a Marine Corps background, and small teams and subject matter experts were something that were really important to me, and knowing that everybody plays a role and has a specific role that they're going to play in your organization. So for me, trying to come into a new role and start letting people know that, hey, your role is valuable and you are now the subject matter expert was something I had to continually communicate and share with people until they kind of bought off and understood that, yeah, I may not be the youth coordinator. I have experience in youth programs and know what's going on, but you're also the one that is specifically doing the job on a day-to-day basis. So why wouldn't I go to you for some answers and for some input and feedback into the organization and into whatever decisions I may need to make from the seat that I have. So it really was trying to start the communication open. Not to say that there wasn't communication. I can't tell you I wasn't at the previous leadership. I wasn't part of that team, but I know a couple of folks here were. But really for me, it was trying to open up the door and make sure that people knew when we're talking about someone being able to come in my office, they really are able to come in my office. And that was something I wanted to push from the get-go. And I wanted to get to a place where everybody in the organization knew they had a role to play, their role was important. And I personally thought a lot, of and appreciated the input that they had. So that's kind of where it kind of started. If any of you folks have something you want to add to that, but just know that we may be something that might be unique. We may not be unique. You guys may be doing this better. I just wanted to invite you in through this particular session, invite all of you into our discussion. We have many meetings like this that we just start talking and sharing, and this is part of what builds us to be an organization or even a department that I think reaches for a yes and reaches for openness for us to kind of get to the goals that we want to go. So I don't know if there's anything from you folks that want to dive in on that, just the background on that at all.
I would just say that it took a little bit of time. It wasn't like Henry came in and just the culture just was like a switch. It flipped. It took a little time. I know Henry made some decisions probably on hiring and things like that weren't real popular. He had to go through some bumps in the road, but I think overall it took a while, but it did eventually kind of change the culture. So.
And that's a good point what Ian says. I think part of the bumps in the road is, looking at who is where and what seat are they sitting in your organization or in your team, and I say that for wherever you're at in your particular organization. Your team may consist of, 3 part-time folks, but are those 3 part-time folks really in the right role that you want them to be so that your team operates? And for me, it was, I think a bump in the road would be actually deciding to go out and having a recruitment to know that people, maybe bring some fresh eyes in as I move some stuff around. So those are some of the things that are coming in there. And again, if there's stuff that you guys hear as we're talking this, please shoot us a little question on the chat, and we'll try and address those as they come as well. So what is a culture of yes? Again, for us, it's a mindset and an attitude of asking and really answering, why not? As opposed to saying no right away, what are the things that we can continue to ask ourselves that will get us somewhere? So part of us and the background right now that really drives us as a department, and I don't know how many of you folks have this, but we currently have a strategic plan. It's our Parks, Recreation, and Arts Strategic Plan, which was developed over a couple of years, which helps us in trying to say, what is it that we want to do? What do we want to get to? How do we want to, what are the events, the programs, and all the services that we may want to address for our community? We know we have this plan that a lot of people have put the time, money, and effort into, and got community input that says this is how we want it to be for us. Our town goal basically is to provide exceptional municipal services that make people's lives better. Okay, so if we're shooting for that, how are we doing that through our department? And for us, always holding that strategic plan or that guidebook for us is really important, because it allows us to not have to, it gives us the box to play in, which really is kind of a flexible moving target. It gives us the creativity and the purpose and the innovation that we're able to do in just kind of thinking of stuff that comes up through that. And then where it's also for a department, it allows us to look at this thing and go, hey, this is what the community said they want, and this is what we're going for. And that's why, we as a staff are trying to ask the right questions to get the right things in place. So for some of you guys, just to kind of go on, the strategic plan, kind of what that helped for us, that whole process too, sorry to step back for a second, was a joint process with staff, our commission, and our council. Everybody took part in kind of building that, which also, again, allows us to build that culture of unity and working together to achieve a goal. So now we not only have the staff bought into something, but we have the commissioners and our council bought in as well, where we did what we call intercept events, went out into the community. Normally people do maybe 5 intercept events to get feedback. We did 15. And we did them at different locations and different times. And there was always at least one staff member and at least one commissioner that came by and took input from folks. So just keep that in mind. Again, it's who are we bringing to our table? Who is a part of the process all the way through? But for you guys on the panel, some things that might be success stories or maybe not so successful, just right off the bat, that kind of helps you share our story of how do we even get to this? How is this even a culture that we think is happening for us? And you guys can, raise your hands, whatever. I don't know. But remember, you're on mute too. Don't have to unmute yourself. So, Leah,
everybody jump.
Okay, I can go first. Sure.
Yeah.
So I think when we're talking about a culture of yes, there's a lot of steps that lead up to it. So it doesn't mean that all of our proposals are met with unanimous yes, or even getting granted permission to move forward from Henry. But it's kind of built into our department that whenever we have a new program or idea, there's going to be a very pointed and intentional discussion around it. And that has shaped the way that I bring proposals to Henry during my one-on-ones. And there's definitely a brainstorming phase that can happen as part of a conversation. But if I have something that I'm passionate about and I know that I want it to happen, I might present it a little bit differently. So my success story was bringing a senior lunch program to Danville. So previously there was no lunch program at all. It's a more affluent community, so we might not have a lot of those county markers that would designate us as a location for a senior lunch program. But I saw value in it from a social aspect. Obviously, we're seeing the value now as we're reaching out to our more vulnerable populations. So this was something I was passionate about. And when I brought it to Henry, I said, these are all the steps I've taken to do my research. He had questions, which we refer to as poking holes. And I understood that that was going to be a part of the process because that is how we work. So I came prepared to address most of his questions, but not all of them. And so as part of my approval process was understanding that I would have homework to go back and do some research in order to be able to implement it. But that was one example that I came up with.
Anybody else? While you're in.
Yeah, I'll go. So when I came back 5 years ago here in Danville, started off as the senior and adults coordinator. And in the meantime, started learning the culture a little bit here in Danville, and then moved over to youth programming. And I know Henry tells this story a lot, but it's something that I learned a little bit through him and with the town, is that they're very open. And the likelihood of, if you do your research, things might happen. Not always, but at the same time, it's a lesson that I keep passing on, and I think it's a good lesson. Some of you guys might know, we do May the 4th be with you here in Danville. It's all celebrating everything about Star Wars. And within the first year, we were doing a Jedi training. And as a youth coordinator, I really wanted to bring, people flying across the town green on a zip line. And people are telling me, no, I don't know if that's going to, be okay. So I went through the steps. So first step was my plan. What was I going to use? How is it going to be safe? I checked in with maintenance. I actually checked in with the town attorney or city attorney as well, just to make sure, liability wise, we're okay with doing something like this. So when I did bring it to Henry at this point, he said, well, what have you done? And so surprisingly, I think to him, I went through those steps. And at that point in time, he said, well, it sounds like you have done everything up to this point, and it sounds good to go. So up to this day, we still have our zip line going from one tree to another tree with the volunteers and the safety factors, but it's become just kind of one of those things where now we know it's kind of like you build your case and then present it versus just saying, hey, I have an idea. Even though some ideas do come to reality, as that's how May the 4th be with you came to Danville. So that's just one of my success stories. Of course, not everything. I think in a perfect world, yeah, everything would be approved, but sometimes, we have to go back to the drawing board. And again, these are just steps that we take to get to the yes.
And if I can just kind of jump off that one, just so you guys know, what I was hearing was I started getting little percolations from other folks that, someone's thinking about having a zip line for one of our events. And I don't know about you guys, when I'm thinking zip line, I'm thinking, the Amazons and things are coming down off the top of the trees, off the top of the buildings. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I was getting a little fired up because I'm like, what's going on? And why are my people doing this? And who are they talking to? Because I'm hearing from other departments that this is coming through. So I had to then take a step back myself and realize what was happening. And what was happening was, as RJ said, he was checking all the boxes that he knew that I was going to be asking about in order to make something happen to the yes. So when I ask them, I will ask things like, hey, what does that look like? Show me what that looks like. Or, what does that entail? Those are the questions I come into. And have you spoken to ... would be the other questions that I asked. So it was funny to me because I got all fired up, but then in the end, he was doing exactly what I've been asking these guys to do in order to do it. But I even had to take a step back and go, okay, let them do their thing, regardless of what you hear, let them present it to you. And that's what I did, and he did. And it was one of those things that, came to a yes fairly quickly. Now, everything's not always a yes, but go ahead, Jess.
I just wanted to piggyback on that. So prior to RJ, I was the youth coordinator. Sorry, I think I said youth and teen coordinator. I was not the youth and teen coordinator. I was just the youth coordinator.
You've been here so long, it's just you could be done everything.
It just meshes together. I was the youth and teen supervisor. And I don't know if you remember this, Henry, but when I was the youth coordinator, we were talking to the library about partnering with them with doing the Dr. Seuss party. You were pretty against me adding any special events back then. So this is kind of piggybacking on May the 4th is Henry also allowed us to, or encouraged us rather, to really look at how we can do things differently. So just because we host extravaganza and elf workshop and Santa's mailbox, like we can still do more events, but it's going to look a little different, right? So we partnered with the library on Dr. Seuss, and then when May the 4th came around, it really was a whole recreation department effort. And it wasn't just on the youth coordinator or the youth and teen supervisor to do one piece. We had Ian that did the cantina crawl portion. RJ did the Jedi training portion. I did the scavenger hunt portion. So it's just looking at things a little differently and not being so siloed in all of our different events.
So anybody got any stories of how we get to a no? Like, because there's not always successful, right?
So I'm certainly the walking in a different direction. I feel like in my experience, not that I haven't had experiences that are yeses, but there's a lot on my mind currently, so I can't speak of specific ones, but one that started out as a no and eventually turned into a yes was, for me, I was presented with a situation that I needed to reevaluate how I was working with my league managers and how we were processing registration and getting waivers signed. And I was approached by one of our other departments about trying to utilize DocuSign, and had gone through the process of looking at what that would look like for our department, what the needs were for us and me and the leagues. And in that process, I'm the type of worker that's like, I get an idea and I want to go with it, and then I'm good. And I like to implement right away. I'm a fast-paced worker, and that was not necessarily the direction that the rest of the department was going in for that specific thing, I feel like. So it was while it started out as a no, I would say the no was more so just our department wasn't ready to dive into something that we really didn't know necessarily much about and had it implemented maybe on a smaller scale. But I'm happy to say recently, the whole organization has jumped onto DocuSign and implementing that in our organization as a whole. And so that no became a yes. And, you know, it can be hard when you put in that effort to do the research and you have a great idea that you feel like would work really well. You know, I was looking at how it would benefit me as a coordinator, as well as how it would benefit our league managers and the things that they struggle with in signing their teams up, collecting signatures, collecting money, even though money really doesn't have anything to do with DocuSign, but all the different elements that they have to go through to be successful in registering for our programs. So to hear a no initially was really hard for me. And I didn't understand it, but the good news about it is that even when you go through these processes of compiling data and having information available, that when you are at a point, hopefully to get to a yes, you have those tools already in place and established. And so, you know, for us, as we're moving into DocuSign as an organization, we already have a framework for what our DocuSign document would look like for league registration. So our implementation process will go a lot faster now than it would have if we were starting at ground zero.
Kat brings up like just a great point in the fact that, you know, I like to say, just because you hear a no right now or you don't hear a yes, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. There's, from where you sit, where everyone sits in an organization, you have some blinders on, right? So each one of the programmers, if you think about it, you think about your program, your blinders are right here. But as a supervisor, your blinders get moved up a little bit. As a director, manager, your blinders, you know, widen out a bit. And you have to see a little bit more. So there may be some things that I see and are aware about prior to a supervisor or coordinator knowing about that quite yet. And it's not something that I can necessarily share quite yet, or I don't have all the information. I just know that what they may be proposing right at that moment may not be perfect for that time. Doesn't mean that we're going to go away, but it doesn't also mean don't do your research. I think that's the other thing, is kind of do your research. What does that look like? I really try and strive for our department. The best way to describe it is to be a teaching hospital. I want each one of us to learn at our particular level what we need for not only our level, but then what we need for the next level, but what do we need for our profession and our career. So really having that opportunity for all of us from the beginning to the end is something that's important to me. So that teaching hospital and asking people to go research and find out what it is that they truly want is important for me, as, you know, helping to build this culture that gets us to these yeses. The more that information they have, not only does it benefit our department, but it benefits them. It's, you know, now there again, it helps them and sharpens their skills as a subject matter expert to be able to say, hey, by the way, here's what we know, here's what we do, and here's how I'm doing it. one of the examples, just as far as teaching hospital I have that I want to share is, I remember when I got promoted to supervisor, and once I got promoted to supervisor, all of a sudden the budget system came and they're like, hey, start justifying your budget. And I'm like, justifying what? You know, I thought there's a money tree, is there not? Do I not just say, hey, give it, you know, and it comes? That's how I thought about it. Nobody told me about this. So I kind of told myself that if I ever got in the position where I would be supervising others, I would not only make sure that they knew the budget, you know, I knew the budget, but they knew the budget and what they were doing. So for me, and maybe a lot of people do this at this point, but I just know now that every coordinator actively works in their budget process. The supervisors actively work to know what's in their dollars and what they can spend, so that they realize, A, there is no money tree. And what we say we're going to spend is what we're going to spend, and not anymore. And what we're going to make is what we're going to try and strive to make. So it's just little things like that to help build up the folks to understand. You know, first we seek to understand. So as we're building the foundation to get to that culture, right? Do you know what you're doing? Are you the person that understands it all? And are you able to move through the process on this stuff? So that is something that kind of works for us. And again, you know, a no doesn't really mean no all the time. One of the things that is also helpful for us, and another one of our little buzzwords, is, let's say it's something that I might call myself wiggly or kind of crunchy about. I'm like, yeah, but they make a pretty decent case for something. I might throw out, you know, or actually they're throwing out now, hey, can I just pilot it? You know, so I can live with piloting a program. I can live with standing in front of council and saying, hey, we just piloted it, didn't work. You know, or it did work, and look, now we're doing more. So that is one of the things that I think the language that as you build your team like this, what are we doing? That's how that language gets used against you in a court of Henry to get the things that they need, and it's been fantastic. But it's kind of fun. Those are little things that we use that are those things that we get always. If those decision makers get weird about something, you're like, you know, it was just something we were trying. That's why we called it a pilot program and things like that. Any other comments on the stuff that so far from our panel that you guys want to add in on that?
I was just going to say with the budget thing. So prior to Henry being here, we did not, as a coordinator, I was a coordinator at the time, did not do anything with the budget. And so when he came and gave us that opportunity, it really does help with knowing what you want. And in fact, now I have the privilege of supervising Kat, and basically I come to her like, what code do you want me to use for this or whatever, because she knows it so much better than I do. So it's just, I think it helps because she's the one that's, you know, doing the day-to-day things, and I think it just helps overall and understanding of everybody and what everybody else does.
So here's a question that I want to answer. So how did we fund the pilot program, and do you allocate money for these programs? That's a good question. So how do we fund the pilot program? That's another question that I ask all the time is, do you have money in your budget? You know, so it's not something that we're like all of a sudden going to have new money, but it is, we try, when budgeting, we try to say, here's a certain amount that we know we're allocating for all the things we know we're doing. And then here's a little dollar amount that we know for any new programs that may come up. So that's one way that we actually kind of fund and allocate for those monies. So another question that came up, are we making decisions as a group or do so by consensus? So here's how it goes. Ultimately, I know I have the final decision, and we'll say, you know, Jessica and I will get into, you know, some heavy conversations where in the end I might have to say, hey, guess what? You know, I'm the director, I get to make that call. So I would say that decisions are made with input from all for me to get a better idea of what we're really saying yes to. If it is a division decision like Ian's team, you know, and he gives me all the information I need, I might say, hey, you guys make the call, you tell me. You know, you tell me how do you do this? How is it done? You tell me which way you want to go. You know my concerns, you know what I want achieved, you know, go forth and make that choice. Any response on those questions from you guys?
Well, go ahead, RJ. Okay, you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, ultimately it is Henry's decision, but he does value everyone's opinion and asks for it. I would say pretty much, if not a daily basis, then a weekly basis. The supervisors meet twice a month. as a leadership group. So we talk about a lot of things in there and brainstorm a lot. And we also have monthly staff meetings, and there is a portion set aside during our staff meeting called Think Like a Champion, and that's where everybody can bring their new ideas, and we practice this Swiss cheese method. So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry. No, you were next, RJ. Sorry.
Okay. I was just going to go back to piloting a little bit. I know that we've done pickleball. I've been on this disc golf frenzy for a while. But a lot of stuff to pilot is we just take out of our programs. I know the part of the yes culture is sometimes no. And for me, briefly, I came to Henry with a disc golf tournament, and he says, "Do you have the equipment?" Well, I've been getting equipment for Arts and Rec on the Go, summer camp, so I had enough stuff to go with. And he said, "Well, let's tone it down a little bit and maybe pilot it." So, but just utilizing equipment that we've had has given us, you know, really good resources and tools versus just budgeting to buy something for a pilot. So I just wanted to add that.
And yeah, to go along with the piloting program and finding the money, that's the advantage of doing your own budget and knowing it and tracking it, is that there might be some programming, something might go down, or where you didn't spend money or something, and you have it and you know that, and you can present that to Henry and say, so this program didn't go this session, so can we take that money and try to pilot this program? So.
And just to be clear too, that, I mean, our divisions, our supervisors have a lot of autonomy within their teams as well. I mean, really, when we talk about those meetings that we have, those leadership meetings, it's my opportunity to pour into them, assuming and expecting that they are going to be taking some of that information to their staff and doing the same thing, pouring into them and making sure that they have that info as well and communicate down. Sometimes, in all honesty, sometimes the communication goes down pretty clear, and sometimes it's vague, and sometimes I have a coordinator in my office saying, "What the hell were they talking about?" You know, so which is totally fine, and it's okay, because you know we ask for that stuff, you know. And when we talk about constructing the order of our meetings, we still have business to do, and I still have, you know, an outline and things that I want to kind of go through. But building in those little times to be able to get feedback back is what's really important too. I think we've gotten some good ideas, or at least rounded out good ideas that people have had when they brought them to the table to everyone. Because one of the things you need to think about when bringing something to the table is who needs to be there? Who needs to be at the table and discussing all these things? When RJ had his zipline idea, it wasn't just about RJ and our department. He needed to talk to maintenance. He needed to talk to, you know, our city attorney. All of those things needed to come in place. So we need to know who needs to be at our table in order to get this to happen. So those are things that kind of help us, you know, construct order in a meeting. We have the order, and then we plug in times for us to just, you know, dream. We also have an annual staff retreat that we do, where we will typically have, you know, the beginning of the day will be about the business, whatever the topic of the day is, and then the second half of the day is play. We'll either go, you know, we'll have, you know, we've done minute to win it games, we've done an escape room, we've done bowling, so it just depends. We've done an art day, so it's things of that effect that kind of happen. So things that make it work for us really is those communication opportunities, right? Weekly check-ins with individuals, with teams, monthly department meetings. We also, when we talk about organization-wide, and we have a couple of folks on this call right now, both RJ and Kat, who serve on our employee engagement committee, which is a town-wide committee, which really kind of focuses on how the town can engage with its employees and how, you know, we can get information back to them. Our town manager actually, based on the employee engagement committee and surveys that were years ago, now attends all of our staff meetings. So he attends 6 staff meetings a month, and he has a portion that he gets to share what's up with the town and what's up with council and anything that, you know, he may want to share with us. And he sticks around for our staff meetings. So that's not only are we doing our own thing with ourselves, but then now our ultimate boss, who has to report to the council, is there sitting there listening and hearing all the different things that are going on. Anything you guys want to add on that stuff?
I just want to say, kind of speaking to the situation that we're all coping with and adapting to right now, those tools have really carried us forward. So as a supervisor team, we meet virtually or by phone Monday mornings at 9:30 to talk about the big things that are happening within our division for the week. And with COVID-19 and the rapid changing of information, we have applied that. And so we meet every day. I don't know what time it is, but 9:30 maybe.
9:30.
And now we're doing a virtual Zoom. So for us, it's the sense of connection and also communication, so that when we go talk to our team, we have updated information, and provides kind of a sense of security and an opportunity to brainstorm and work through problems on a more regular basis.
Another thing that I think for me that tries to help build a culture of yes, I need to also know where everybody wants to go. You know, where do people want to go when they grow up, you know, so to speak, in our profession or in our group. You know, just with the, you know, the 5 other folks that I'm sitting here, that's 5 other directions, 5 people that want to go in 5 different places. Some are the same, but they might get there in a different manner. You know, what are the experiences that we are providing them in order to grow professionally, not only in the recreation park profession, but maybe outside of the profession, and just still with municipality and working with that. Right now, Kat, as an example, was voluntold and brought into a specific job role that the town needed during this crisis. You know, and she's someone that said, oh, you know, okay. You know, I think she really wanted to hear, what does that look like? And what does that mean? She's been tasked with the convergent volunteers, really are, how do we, if we need to have volunteers during this time frame, where do we go? What do they need? What's the information they're going to need? Not only that, then if we ever have a drop-off point or some other logistical need for these particular things related to COVID-19, how's that going to happen? So now that has been dropped in Kat's lap and has been able to take over. Now, how does that help her in her Parks and Rec career? To me, it's adaptability. It's transferable skills. All the skills that she's learned doing the stuff on a day-to-day basis right now, she's also using through this other emergency operation, you know, assignment. So that's a big thing too for us, is transferable skills. Each one of the folks that are on this call, I want to make sure that they have different skills as they move forward in their career that is only going to help them. You know, sitting on townwide committees, knowing their budget, you know, again, knowing responsibilities of others is also helpful on that end. You know, so I think that's something that's important. And you just publicly, again, we thank Kat for taking on this role, which really was basically, hey, here's what we're thinking, go. And that's what she's been doing right now. So, and that's kind of the culture kind of throughout the town, just allowing her to just roll with it. Any comments on that from you folks?
About transferable skills?
All of it, yeah.
I definitely learned that I had them. All of us sitting here on this call, you know, we all started doing something different. I mean, you heard from my background, all of my background is in youth and teens. And what was it, a year or so ago, Henry? A year and a half ago? Something like that. 2 years?
But it started 3 years ago.
He said, yeah, he said, guess what? He pulled out the guess what and said, you know, in a couple of years, you're moving over to cultural arts and marketing. I'm like, well, I know nothing about cultural arts or marketing. So I'm pretty sure my response was no. And, but then we got to a point where little by little, I started accepting it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I could try something new. And then the cultural arts and marketing supervisor at the time left for another position. So I actually had to start in my current position about 7 months earlier than I thought I was going to. And I think that was the biggest surprise to me, was not having a background in this, but yet I did take some of those skills that I've learned, and it's different, but you can still apply them in the same way.
And that you, from wherever you're at in your organization too, understanding the folks that are there. So I told my 4 supervisors in 2 years, you're all swapping. So knowing that some needed the 2 years to get on board, some were like, whatever. And then, you know, some were like, oh, goody, let's go. You know, so it really just depends on where you're at and who you are. But knowing if you're going to do something like that, that it may take some time. But for me, it was the vision of giving that opportunity for a different skill set and to work out. You know, same thing with knowing when the need arose, you know, understanding that Kat may have some expertise through her she does facilities. She's also, she does a lot of customer service and a lot of, talking to folks back and forth, planning for things, right? Weddings, whatever it may be. And now she's doing this new role. Anything that, Kat, you may want to add as far as your transferable skills into this new role and how you see it might be fitting right now?
I mean, I would just say for myself, I have a business management degree, which is important in recreation, because even though recreation is the fun department, we also essentially are a business. So there's a lot of things that on a servicey level, I feel like I can go back to my education and implement some of the things that I've learned there and what I do in my day-to-day job. But definitely for sure in this new role that I'm embarking on, I feel like I'm back in college again, and looking at reporting and doing a lot of analysis and looking at what, compiling just a lot of data from all over, from a local level, county level, a state level, and a federal level of information that's out there, and what people are doing, how we're doing it. Do we have the right documentation to cover us, or how do we navigate ourselves? So going back, to skills that I haven't really utilized to its full potential in a while, I am now getting back into that. So it's similar to what Jess said, is like just reacquainting myself with the skills that I have that are transferable and how they all intertwine with each other.
Thanks, Kat. The other thing that's important that makes it work for us, like when I talk about the communication, it's also knowing who you're talking to. We as a town, we as a department did this. We did the DISC profile training, where each one of us got to find out what we were personality-wise, and then as a town, we did that as well. But for my particular staff and my direct reports, the letters are D, I, S, and C. So each one is a different crazy, personality. Which, if I look at the 4 that I directly supervise right now, my direct reports, I have a D, an I, an S, and a C. So for me, I'm pretty balanced at the top to be able to have the different types of personalities to understand. But even in our communication efforts, we need to know, it's like, so I'm what they call an I, and I don't know that I have any other letter other than the I, which is pretty, out there. Whereas Jessica, as an example, is a D, which is someone who's pretty much like, let's get to it. So, our personality differences would be, I want to have a conversation of, hi, hello, how are you, how's your day? And she may go, can we just get down to business? So one of the things that we've had to learn early on was I may have to say something like, hey, do you want a D today, or can we I? Just to start our one-on-one meetings. And there'll be times where she's D, and there's sometimes where I'm like, let's just get to the business, because, I need to go on to what's next, and I want to do it. But we've been able to learn each other's personalities a little that way, and communication style, to know how to approach each other. And that's even me, and how do I approach each one of the supervisors or even the coordinators, and how they approach me as well. So that's been something for us that has helped it work, our communication work. So, whether you do colors, DISC, Myers-Briggs, whatever it is that people do, numbers, all those types of things are really helpful in that communication. I'm looking that we have a few, we got 15 or so minutes, and unless you guys have something to say, I wanted to play a little game in the sense of, I wanted to show you our Swiss cheese method with maybe one of your guys' ideas. If someone has an idea that's out there that you're working on, that you can tell us a little bit about. This might be one of those that, hey, poke your little hand up. I think there's a raise hand thing, right? Or who knows, maybe not, but let us know if you have something to say, and we'll try and, if you don't mind us doing our Swiss cheese and method, and for whatever your idea may be, let's see if we can make it work for you. Right now, all of us are going through random ideas of how the hell do we even do our job, from sitting where we're sitting. But it could be something that's in the future that you've been thinking about too, but I would love to open that up. So if anyone has an idea or thought that you want to throw at us and allow us to play poke holes and do our Swiss cheese method, just to kind of show you how that helps build our culture, please do. Looking for a person. Sarah? Is that you? No. Let me see if there's anybody out there saying anything. And again, I get the fact that I don't want to talk right now. I just want to listen. But is there something, and maybe not, maybe you can see, is there something that we've got that one of you has going that you want to kind of play around with on the panel right now too? But I'm also open for someone if they've got something. All right,
Steve.
so let's do this.
Raise his hand.
Oh, Steven, what you got?
I'm wondering about how the your subcontractors or companies like management partners and those kind of companies that would be having the same kind of problems with the virus as your own employees and everything.
So like, if you're talking about our, like for us, they would be as contract instructors, right? So how are we helping our contract instructors and how would we be able to, I don't know, employ them, I would say at this point in time. Maybe Leah, you can start us off with the idea of how that goes about, and then we'll, you know, throw out what we're doing and how some of the holes we've poked in it already. And then I have a question from Cynthia.
Okay, do you want me to just throw out a proposal?
Yeah.
So I would like to propose that for our contract instructors, we offer them the opportunity to take classes online, but still provide the registration services that we typically do. Maybe feature them on our website, do some internal promotions for them.
So how else what does that look like specifically? Like what are the things that we need to do?
Well, we need to have a secure video format online. So maybe looking into Zoom or something that's password protected so that people who are registered can access the video feed, but it would prevent others from getting involved.
And panelists, feel free to ask the questions that you think may come up.
Are you going to ask for payment? Is it going to be the same price as the normal classes?
That's a great question. I think it kind of depends on how much of the class a student can access from home. So I know in the case of some of our mat Pilates and yoga instructors, they're able to do a full class from the online and even provide student feedback if the students have their cameras on. So part of the contract instructor piece would be allowing them to set their fees, but also can we encourage them to provide us with some free content for our Find the Fun virtual recreation site, or what kind of innovations can we do there?
So how are we going to handle any refunds if a person can't access a class?
I'll ask Henry how he wants to.
What do you want us to do, Henry?
We did have a senior instructor who came up with instructions on how to access Zoom. So since it's for seniors by seniors kind of thing, hopefully there's some skills that we can teach the public, and this might be a new frontier for us moving forward.
So who's going to monitor this? Is it going to be us, or is it going to be the instructor, or what?
Who's going to monitor what?
The class, like how it comes through.
Well, what I've heard that other cities are doing is they have a staff person who will sit in on the Zoom call as a host to monitor the content and make sure that it doesn't get hijacked and make sure that the students are properly using the technology. So that's one option.
And that's how you can monitor attendance too. I think that was a question that just came up.
Yeah.
Or verify attendance.
Oh.
Have you heard about any? Yes. Yeah. See, I'm getting some of the questions from other people, and Leah's like, "What? Why are you doing this to me?"
No, it's fine. Yeah.
So the other way is like, what if somebody gets hurt, right? What are the things that we need to think about? Is that something ahead of time? Have you already talked to our city attorney to be able to, see what kind of liability that holds?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as part of our registration process, we do have our waiver. And one of the feedback or the comments that we got from one of our senior center staff is to encourage seniors to keep their cameras on so that instructors, especially with like stretching or anything like that, so instructors can still correct form and things like that to maximize safety.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So that gives you one picture. We have a question. So here's a question for our panel to poke holes in.
Me to listen to that has absolutely nothing to do with my job.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I missed that one.
Maybe they said they were leaving because it has nothing to do with their job.
Okay. All right, that's okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So here's one that says we have monthly classes that we have participants sign a waiver in every month. Would there be a way that they don't have to sign it every month? So Kat, how would you may approach it? It's a waiver kind of question. Maybe it's kind of you. How would we think about that one? If, how do we go about getting to a yes to they wouldn't have to sign a waiver every month? What are some thoughts or questions?
Gosh, that's a hard one. So, I mean, it's something that I can speak to is with adult sports. So, you know, as we're working on getting to the DocuSign, we're not quite there yet for sports leagues. So I really looked at, you know, going off of my know on how other ways that I can help our league participants and our managers and try to streamline the process for them, is that I had reached out to our town attorney and looked at, like, okay, they're signing the same thing for 3 or 4 seasons in a row. Is there a way, instead of just making it every season, that the signature that they get for the first season of the year goes for the whole year? And after, like I said, talking to our town attorney, he was okay with that, and he didn't see an issue with that. So now I've changed the process on how we register, is that even though it's difficult for the managers, I let them know, hey, you're only doing this once. And then if you bring on new people, then obviously I'm going to need those signatures, but at least you don't have to be collecting it every 2 months for a year.
So it's looking at those, it's looking at questions like that and continue to ask questions until you can dial down into an answer. Now, a question was asked, you know, what do they have written proposals, or is it a kind of a one-on-one? Sometimes, for one, Kat, they'd love that verbiage from you. But sometimes, do we go all out to propose an idea? Is there a proposal that is written? Sometimes, yeah, if there's a need for it to be written, but mostly it is a discussion. We start with a discussion, and it will happen. If it's something that I need written, I will request it in a written form. But for the most part, when it's a new idea or proposal, it's like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. It comes in, I think Leah kind of expressed it. It comes in, I'm going to brainstorm with you, or I'm going to come with an idea. If you brainstorm with me, I can ask as many questions as I want all over the time. If you're coming with a plan, I'm going to specifically poke holes in the plan. So, and ask questions related to that plan and what you're asking me to do. So those are how we kind of get to the proposal process. And so, yes, sometimes written, formal, if need be. If not, Leah, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in on that. I know we've talked a lot about subject matter experts, and that's definitely something we embrace in our agency. But the other thing that we haven't talked about is kind of these informal strengths that everyone has. So I know if I want to throw Harry Potter's birthday event, I go to Jess because she's the master at growing the theme. I know if I have questions about the weather, Ian tends to know if it's going to rain 8 days from now or not. And, you know, and RJ is great just with working through the process and asking those questions. So even if you don't have these formalized processes in your agency, really seeking out those people that are around you, because everyone has something unique to offer, and even like personal interests. You know, RJ's thing is 30 minutes of fitness a day. So how can we program around that? So really looking at the assets that already exist, and then and in that way we kind of are able to build our own.
Yeah, and kind of looking at our time and stuff like that too. Knowing this, we did have someone who maybe left the call because they felt this didn't relate to their position. I think that's what they may have said. But I would argue to say that building a culture, yes, and the things that we talked about are the tools that we put in place in order to help us get to a place where we're able to ask for stuff and get to a yes. For you and each every one of you, wherever you are in your organization, whatever place that you sit in, whether you're a coordinator, part-time, whatever, there is a group of people that you influence specifically that you are able to then work your own culture of yes. You can start these particular tools for yourself and start saying, hey, you know, who's my subject matter expert? And if we do this, you know, how can I poke holes in this so that I can best, you know, I always, in the end, I go, can I stand in front of council and say, this is what we did and why we did it? If I feel comfortable with that, that means all the questions that I've asked and answered for myself, I feel okay. So are you able to stand in front of whoever your decision maker is and say, this is where I'm at, and this is how I want to do it, and this is where I want to be in. So it helps us to know that we can do this at any level of the agency that you're at. You just have to start it with your own team. Any comments from our team? And there's a couple of questions I want to try and answer as well.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing real quick to Cynthia and just like verbiage and how I approach things. We're fairly lucky in our organization that we're pretty small. So I think everybody has a really close relationship and we're really open with each other. And so I was able to go to our town attorney and just have like a pretty simple conversation, you know, and throw ideas off of him. I think also though, you know, I've gone to quite a few trainings where they talk about like, you know, when you're presenting a new idea to write a memo on what you're doing, what your findings are. And so it's really looking at who you're presenting the idea to and how do they receive information the best way. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. You know, in our department meetings, we started at, you know, just throwing things out there, and we're actually able to build off of the idea. Like, you know, I can come in and say I want to do a home run derby with softball, and that could evolve into, you know, not just adults, but also having a home run derby or some type of games for kids. So that, you know, gets the youth and teen side involved. We also have senior softball, so that can involve seniors. And so our ideas can grow. And then, you know, if it's something that needs to be more formalized, then we have all the resources and the minds to put together to go about, you know, whatever way it needs to be presented at a higher level.
Right on. Thank you, Kat. Also, one of the questions is for our agency, how often are we conducting one-on-one meetings? For you and your direct report, basically it's weekly. For the department, it's monthly. So that's how we go. And how often do we encourage to pilot or begin a new program? Depends on whenever you think of it. I don't know that we really have a limit to say you can only, you know, pilot it annually, seasonally, whatever. It just depends on what kind of comes up. That gives us a little flow on that. So whatever that may be. We're here to answer any questions that you guys have. If there's any last comments from our panel, please feel free to share that. But if it's okay with Chase, we'll stay on afterwards if people have direct questions for us that we can kind of can address with them. But any last comments from our panel?
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I definitely left time at the end, but I did post folks who need to leave early. The link to the CEU survey is down there, but I try not to encourage folks to leave early, but you know. We've got a few more minutes here, and then, yeah, any amount you want to stay to answer questions if we get a few.
There is a little form that we had. It's basically, it's our little, we were going to hand this out at a conference. It's our buzzwords, which talk about poking holes, teaching hospital, our huddle call. That's our Monday morning call to check in for the week. Blinders, I talked about that, pilot program, transferable skills. And then also our building blocks that works for us, our weekly check-ins, monthly department meetings, monthly staff meetings, DISC profile, think like a champion. So that stuff I think is available somewhere, Chase. So thanks, Vincent.
Yeah, thanks.
I will be, so yeah, we at CPRS will have a web page afterwards to host all this stuff. We'll have the recording of the session, any handouts and materials that go with it, as well as all the other sessions we've been doing. That's the end goal. That's also one of our things we're currently shooting holes in. How do we pay for this? How do we host this? Tech requirements, all of that. So yeah, we're working through it ourselves, but we will have it for everybody, and we can always send it via email. If you need anything, you can just reach out to me and ask. chase@cprs.org.
What does that one say? Next webinar we should what?
How to present an awesome webinar.
Oh.
I really do hope that you got, I mean, I really, you know, as we kind of thought about this is kind of, honestly, for some of you guys, this is, if we were to have a small meeting, this is kind of what it goes like. We should start talking about stuff and exploring each other and giving each other, you know, a little bit of crap now and then, but it's kind of fun.
The cool background.
Yeah. Tell us about how to get the cool background.
Oh, can I switch to the casual one now that we're
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's not quite 2 yet. Go for it.
Do you want me to put the Harry Potter one?
absolutely
No.
do it?
I know, I should have had it. Well, I'm at 1%, so my iPad's gonna die.
Why are you laughing there, Crosdini?
Because the background that Leah put up was awesome.
I did not stage this photo. This happened organically.
Leah, look, I'm at Hogwarts.
I love it.
That's awesome. Good job, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like I said, we're here so we can answer. If not, you know, we appreciate your time and time for coming out. And hey, stay healthy and, you know, keep up the spirits. It's really a rough time right now, and that's something that even in a culture of yes, we're still trying to work through and trudge through. So it's a rough one for all of us, and you know, just good luck in each one of your organizations and to power through all this stuff.